Hi, this is Matt with the Intergalactic Herald. Welcome to my Star Atlas Week in Review podcast. This is podcast number 74. All articles or videos mentioned here can be found on my website at intergalacticherald.com. Look for News Recap 123. So just a quick summary before I get started on talk a little bit about the Solana token prices, some content that AFIA released to celebrate their 3-year anniversary, the Atlas Brew, the Crew Pack announcement, and then my two kind of ongoing segments, the state of Star Atlas and my journey playing Star Atlas. But before I get to that, just want to mention two of my Star Atlas projects. One is my Star Atlas merch store called Intergalactic Gear. You can find that at intergalacticgear.com. It is officially open for business. I do have a number of mugs available with different Star Atlas logos on it. You can purchase those if you're in the United States. Also, if you're there, I'm trying to build out some other merch items, so I do have a merch survey. If you could please fill that out, that'd greatly help me understand a little more about some merch items that people would be interested in. And my other Star Atlas project is we'll just call it a Star Atlas community. I've called it a non-guild guild, which is fine. Guess it could be the Star Atlas DAC, the Distributed Autonomous Corporation. But basically, it's the idea of having a paid community platform. Actually, I should say it's a community platform, but it is going to be paid. That's different than Discord. That's more about threaded discussions, email alerts, so you can come and check into things without having to always go. It's not chat-based. It's more of threads and discussion. So you can check that out at intergalacticcoalition.com. And please fill out the interest survey if that's a community you'd like to join. Once we get enough people, I'll start working on that. It will be a paid platform. That is to offset the cost of the software. Unlike Discord, it's not a free software. So anyways, intergalacticcoalition.com. So let's go ahead and get into the content. So the first one, Siggy, Star Atlas content creator, posts a lot on Twitter/X, did post an article about the Star Atlas token prices, why they haven't been maybe moving as much as people want. Well, he was able to deduce that the FTX liquidation. So for people who are not familiar, FTX was a crypto exchange that went bankrupt, and they are now able to pay back some of their members. And so what they're doing is basically selling off some of their assets to convert those back into, I assume, USDC. So apparently they had a lot of Atlas and Polis, Star Atlas tokens that they owned, and so they've been liquidating that on a regular basis. Now, I don't understand the whole liquidity, market makers, things like that in crypto, nor even in the stock market. So I'm not going to claim to understand how that affects price. But again, Siggy had a great article that you can read. I do have a link to that in my news recap number 123. If you go to intergalacticherald.com, you can read more about that. This past week, AFIA announced their 3rd anniversary of existence as a guild, I guess. And so they did a series of content pieces, and I wanted to highlight some of those because I think they were really great. One, they did have video, just all the content they have on their website and other places. So that was really great. I'll hopefully get those links actually on my website into my Star Atlas guide, because I think they're definitely things to highlight. They did a great video using one of their data dashboards, I think on Flipside, about how small players, what different game or functions, I guess is the right way to say it, within Starbase. So that was really great. Very long, but again, lots of content there. So highly recommend that if you're a small player. They also released part 2 of their missing Sage manual, so that's great. And I haven't listened to it yet, but they do also have a automation tutorial for Starbase 2, which I believe they go over the Sly Assistant. So a lot of great content there. I guess they did start. I didn't realize it was kind of part of this series last week or week before, and that's why I was on my last week's agenda. The Explorer interviewed Michael Wagner, and I guess that was kind of part of it. Didn't realize at the end that wasn't on his YouTube channel. But anyway, so a lot of great content they produced this week, and highly recommend if you want to miss some stuff or want to dig into some of the things like automation or kind of how small player economic game loops work. Great information there. Next, as is again routine, the Atlas Brew occurred this past week with the community team. They called it the State of the Community, where they were actually asking for some feedback. So again, it was not awkward, but I mean, people were typing it in and they were verbally responding. So it was, again, with the recordings, I can't see. Well, I guess maybe you can see the chat. I don't know. Star Atlas TV puts out the recordings, and I know there's some sort of chat window, but again, can't zoom in. It's not embedded. Or, I mean, it's just recording the audio. So it was a little disjointed questions and answers. But again, they were definitely taking feedback and addressed some of the things that were coming out, things they had mentioned before, but clarified a little more, like the Zilly campaign and the core comics. So again, it was really good. You got some tidbits there. I'll point out that if you do want just the overview, which is, again, great, quick and fast, Beth does do one on her YouTube channel, and I do have a link to that too. So I think it's usually a 2 or 3 minute recap, and you can get all the highlights there. But again, it's great to listen to the whole thing if you want to. A couple things I did pull out. Michael Wagner popped in a couple of times, and again, it was just great to hear him. But it does. So one thing that was mentioned that, and something I guess it seems kind of obvious after we hear it, but wasn't until it was stated by the team, that at least at the present time, the team basically needs to release something, anything, in order to keep the community engaged. And I kind of like, why? But then if you look back at the history, yeah, that's what they're doing. And so they are just releasing something. Again, maybe not where they wanted it perfectly, definitely not fully fleshed out or whatever. And again, they are changing too. So they pointed out, again, this is the strategy, I guess we can call it, to release something, anything. Because again, the community, you want to keep the community engaged. But since it's so early in the process, there's just going to be twists and turns and pros and cons and a whole bunch of stuff. And so if you do look back, I think that is actually a great acknowledgement of how they've been doing things, sort of why, again, community engagement, can't really argue with that. But I guess, I don't know, I think especially the idea that they're having the kind of community feedback, definitely how many weeks after the town hall and kind of how the sediment didn't come out that good. In fact, somebody, I think, mentioned that, yeah, this upcoming Breakpoint seems like it's just going to be rehashing the last Breakpoint, and again, it'll just be announcements of announcements. And I think Michael Wagner did respond to that one, if you look back, what was announced at the last one, lots of those things were released. Now, I agree with that. You could argue the community didn't think of the, shall we say, the quality or the completeness of whatever was released. And I've mentioned that many times, like the DAC platform, and that, weren't, I guess we'll just call it half-baked. But in complete fairness to the team, knowing that they had to release something, it makes a lot more sense now. So I think, even though, as was mentioned, they're building in public, so we see everything. And, I think it was even mentioned that, well, we thought Crew Pack would come out sooner, but then we found something we didn't like. We had to release it later. Again, even they were sort of addressing have we hyped things too much? And, they get excited and they want to talk about it. And I'm like, again, pro or con, good or bad, to understand where the team's coming from, their perspective, I think is really helpful to the community. So in that sense, I think it's really great that they are having these conversations to kind of address things. And as was mentioned, and it's totally true, if they just keep building, they keep producing things, this kind of slow limbo waiting period will seem like a distant memory. But again, we're still in it. So, here we are. The other thing that was mentioned, and I'm pretty sure Michael Wagner said this, so I'm not sure if he used the word regret, but I'll just say in hindsight, he seemed to kind of point out that the time that they released Starbase, knowing what they know now, again, hindsight, that it probably wasn't the best time because, and no one probably could have known this, that the price of Solana obviously went up, and we've had all the issues with the transaction fees, not necessarily the congestion, but definitely the fees really becoming a hindrance to people playing, especially small fleets. And again, I've shown that on a couple of my, journeys, and how, put in $10 and get out $1 and $9 of its fees. Also, Atlas pricing hasn't changed much. But one thing he mentioned, and I think this is a good point, because if we go back to the original Sage game manual, it's very dense. There's lots of things there. And apparently there was something, only vaguely remembering, which was council rank, and that actually would have put some limitations. So it feels like, not through unintended consequences, because if we go back, you got to release something, that Starbase being so easily, not manipulated, but so easily focused on large fleets and people with lots of resources, and the fact that Sol prices were high and Atlas prices didn't, earning Atlas doesn't make much of a thing. The council rank would have kind of slowed some of those things down or given more options. And so I think that's, again, a very fair in hindsight, but nevertheless, being, I can't think of the word, but, aware of how the past was. So I actually really commend that kind of thing. And again, it was shared with the community. So I think all those things are really great. So if you want some more of the details and the more minutia than what I just summarized, please check out the latest Atlas Brew on Star Atlas TV. Again, I have a link on mine. News recap for this past week, which is news recap number 123. And you can get all the details there. So I don't know if it was middle of the week, Tuesday. I don't remember. Again, I catch up on Friday nights. But they did finally have the official crew pack announcements with specific dates on when the different things, whether, and again, I read it real briefly last night, and I got to go back through and actually document the dates so I know when to do certain things. But that the crew is coming to the ships, components are coming to ships. There's a couple things that are going to enable, I think, crew capabilities within Starbase, and then the whole idea that a ship and I don't know, Starbase is slightly changing to accommodate both the new crew and the fact that crew and ships aren't linked anymore. They released a very cool trailer, very high quality, great cinematics, great announcement trailer. But, and again, I need to reread the announcement email, but because it was really late last night when I was reading it, so I don't want to say definitively, but it sure felt like at this time the only utility of crew is in Starbase. As we know, the mobile app is definitely not a high priority. UE5, the showroom / whatever release, isn't now. And so other than opening your crew pack and seeing them and I guess figuring out what rarity you get, and I assume... I think I'm pretty sure the article had something about you'll be able to sell, but it started to sound like a third-party marketplace. I'm not sure about that either. That was definitely more details to come. That other than using it in Starbase, didn't seem like there was any crew utility other than Starbase anytime soon. But again, I'll reread it. Could have missed something. I think they're coming up for sale, but again, it was late. So, and I'm sure some of the other content creators will be coming out with other videos. I think Metaverse Explorer already had one I haven't listened to that came out overnight. So anyway, but we got an announcement, we got dates. So, I mean, as far as from community sentiment, that's what everybody's looking forward to, having a date, having an announcement so they could do things. So we'll have some of that stuff rolling out in August. So moving on, the last two sections. So kind of my my ongoing just thoughts on the state of Star Atlas. I admit I don't have many thoughts. Partly I took off some personal time this past week for summer. Well, I wouldn't call it a vacation, but it was definitely time off. Didn't work as much as an 8-hour day, so took a little easier. So actually, I didn't really think too much about Star Atlas, but also because there wasn't much to think about. This was prior to the crew announcement, or if it came out. That's why I don't remember when it came out, because I really wasn't checking that kind of email. So, but again, crew pack announcement did come out, so that's very exciting. But as unfortunately is the case on many things, I think it's going to be hard to say too excited because it's still many weeks away. But we'll see. Maybe again with something coming out on a weekly basis, which it seemed to be, there'll at least be something to do. So also really want to say that the Atlas Brew, again, sounds like the team is really looking for community sentiment, community feedback, and looking to take that more to heart. And that, I mean, as a community member, well, just as a person, everybody likes to be heard, and definitely feel like you're not being heard, even though, again, as has been mentioned many times, the team's got to develop a product. They have the vision, they have the project plan, they have the resource. I mean, they have the staff. They're making the thing. They're just sort of bringing us on for the ride. Nevertheless, when things do seem to go out of kilter, it is nice that the community or the team is actually asking for things. So, and on that same note, the whole idea of the small player, it keeps coming up in conversations, and so it sure sounds like the original vision of how Sage would have come true. Then it just hasn't been able to fully deploy all of that because of lack of resources and things like that. Resources being staff and money. Well, I guess those are related, but you know what I mean. So that seems to be much more on the team's mind. And so I kind of am feeling more and more that if the team obviously was having to develop things that whales, people with lots of money to invest, could do things. Titans are a perfect example. doesn't matter. Titans are never for small players, but that there's more thought about making sure there's more equality in the different types of game players, and even the pivot for the UE5 game to more of a shooter game as opposed to a racer, because that fits more of what the general gaming community is interested in. I mean, it does speak to small player too, so I think all that's good. Okay, so lastly, kind of update on my journey in Star Atlas. So I've been doing my goal, which is to mine 1 million of the raw materials in Starbase, which helps me, figure out the supply chain, so movement, mining, scanning, also the automation tool, in this case, Sly Assistant. So I did finish mining silica and nitrogen. They were both at the same Starbase, so pretty straightforward, just to change a couple settings and stop mining silica and then mine nitrogen and movement and things like that. So got all those back to this central space station. I did not record data for that because, again, with the going 2 at one Starbase, it would have been a lot more costly, obviously, if I'd moved everything back one at a time. So don't have any data to report on that. That left 2 more resources, and these were even further out. So the next one I started mining was titanium ore. I'm not going to gather data for that one either, because I know it's going to take more fuel because physically it's further away. So it can't be any better, and hence just one less time. Don't have to spend any time trying to track that, just move resources. So one difference on this one, though, was the ability to string together a series of warps between the Central Space Station and the Starbase. That's gone. The Sly Assistant was really great in the sense that it knew, hey, you got to do a subwarp. But those subwarps are over an hour plus. So again, automation's great, but really hard to get. So it's very slow to get resources up. My mining has stalled. The scanning, anything real food, so mining and scanning, those stalled and they didn't catch up. I thought, I'll just move out a lot of resources on one day and let the other ones just sit there. Well, once I started them up, they just went through it. So consumption outstretched movement. So I decided to actually move one of my small ships out of my faction fleet, which again had just been earning Atlas, but its total cargo was way bigger than even some of the fleets I put together with the extra small and small ships. So I went out and just did a whole bunch of pushes of food, but then realized that my ammo ran out. So I decided to move all 3 just to figure, you're going to need food, fuel, and ammo. So I'm getting close to thinking those are finally in equilibrium, meaning bringing more resources than are needed. I actually was toying with buying another another cargo or transport ship, but I realized I already own these, so this is better. And again, I only have 2 more of those to mine. So anyway, so I think I'm finally getting there. This is the second one, last resource to mine, and then I'll mine that last one. But I have to admit, unfortunately, I think I'll just be happy done with it. It's not any different, and in fact, with this slowness, it's taking longer, and I had to bring another ship in. So yeah, and ultimately I don't have anything to do with resources. The one kind of also gotcha on all this that kind of lowers the happiness factor was I've almost depleted my entire fuel stock that the claim stake has been accumulating for, 200 plus days ever since I bought claim stake. So again, it doesn't really matter, but I guess I swapped a whole bunch of fuel for a whole bunch of raw materials. That would actually have been a funner. It doesn't matter, because again, the soul is the problem. It's not the resources in Star Atlas. It's the Solana transaction fees that are the killer. So anyways, we'll see if I can get this done without having to need more fuel. But again, I realized the fuel purchasing on the market for what I probably need is pennies, if even $1 or $2. So it's not really a big issue. So, but again, just a minor kind of taking one resource to get another. But again, this is sort of just an experiment, and I'll be done. So I think I had left that after I got the mining done, I might play around with the crafting and upkeep and that. And I guess just for maybe completism, I'll go ahead and run a couple quick loops of those, because there should be much simpler than the bigger supply chain, but we'll see too. I don't even know where upgrading and upgrading fits in. Some of the star bases may already be updated. But again, I'll check into that. But anyways, that wraps that up. So again, thanks for listening. Again, do want to highlight my 2 projects. So if you're interested in buying a Star Atlas mug, I do have some mugs available for sale at intergalacticgear.com. Please check those out. You can also sign up there for a newsletter so I can update you directly. If you're not interested in buying anything, but you're interested in spending a couple minutes of your time to help me know what merch you might want to buy, please fill out the merch survey there. Again, all that's on intergalacticgear.com. And if you're interested in a Star Atlas community that's on a different platform than Discord, that's more about threaded discussions, updates via email, and you're not really in a guild, so you don't want to hang out on the Star Atlas Discord, please go to intergalacticcoalition.com and fill out my interest survey there. Love to chat with you and carry on these conversations outside the podcast. Other than that, thanks for listening. Hope you have a great week ahead. This is Matt with the Intergalactic Herald.